I have a really big problem, and that is my obsession with narrative. A good story, if you will. And this obsession has certainly served me in many respects. I can tell a pretty mean story, even about kind of mundane details of my life, but it's the obsession that has really bit me in the ass, so to speak, because not everything in my life has to be a perfect narrative, and life is not a perfect narrative, but I need it to be so, and that is the problem. I was reflecting on this and suddenly thought of Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement speech from I don't know how many years ago, and to my recollection, he said something along the lines of, you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards.
Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future.
Honestly, I don't remember exactly what the point of that quote was, but thinking about it, I was like, well, shit. I am always trying to connect the dots looking forward. And it's exhausting. It makes my life kind of fun and dramatic, but at the same time, it is just like mental gymnastics, constantly trying to piece together how everything happening in the current moment fits into the timeline of my life and what that greater story is, what that meaning is. And it's a lot. As a quick disclaimer, this video is probably going to reference a lot of YouTubers because I watch a lot of YouTube and I'm frequently influenced by them in multiple ways. But the first person I want to talk about is this girl, Caroline Winkler. Love her videos. And she talks pretty publicly from time to time about like her dating life, and what sparked this epiphany for me was pretty much her saying the exact same thing, that she is obsessed with a good narrative in terms of her dating life, and that's what really gets her going. And I related to that so much. And I realize I do the same thing of getting really caught up in the narrative of a relationship and how that fairy tale is going to play out. And even if it's not like a fairy tale, just what those twists and turns are and how they're contextualized in the whole relationship, even though I don't know what's going to happen at the end of a relationship. Obviously, but my head thinks that it might know, or it dreams up this beautiful story of what could happen, and I take whatever's in the present moment and weave it into that story, or I try to, at least. If you know me personally, which I think most of you do, you may know that in a previous life, I was in a relationship for 8 years. And now looking back, I realize that that's a pretty common occurrence, long-term relationships that don't work out. But post-breakup me was distraught. Not because I was heartbroken, which of course I was, but because my whole narrative was shattered. I had spent 8 years carefully crafting this narrative of my relationship and how this person and I complemented each other in various ways, and especially how we had overcome a lot of different obstacles and how we had worked so hard to make our relationship work despite everything. And all of a sudden, that was a lie. And so very quickly, just to resolve my cognitive dissonance, my brain just started shooting off and trying to rewrite this narrative to fit the new truth of my life. And of course, the reality of what happened in that situation is so complex and can't be distilled into, a nice boxed up story. But my brain wants a nice boxed up story. It wants the narrative. It wants something very clear that can be explained in a thesis and everyone can understand what the moral of that story was. Fast forward to me getting into my current relationship, I found myself doing the very same thing. How does being in this new relationship affect my life story? And how can I reconcile it with all my relationship history? And what does it mean if this is the person that I end up with? And what's the story they're gonna tell at our wedding? And of course, after hearing my voice saying those words, I was like, you know what? Stop. I'm being crazy. How am I deluding myself into believing that I can predict what the story is going to be in the future? And I've come to realize I have never been in control anyways. All of this spinning a narrative, though beautiful, is just really for my own entertainment. And now, present day, I am consciously trying to let go of formulating this narrative and just let life happen and enjoy it. And I came to this epiphany just shy of a year ago, and let me tell you, it's been amazing. It's very freeing not having to worry about how all the different puzzle pieces of my life fit together and just letting it be what it is. Of course, it's still hard for me to kind of wrap my brain around this new concept, and I do have to constantly remind myself that it's okay for me not to know how things are gonna turn out. And when I do catch myself drumming up a pretty little story of how my future might turn out, I just give myself a gentle little reminder, and I'm like, hey, stop it. Lastly, I'm trying to be okay with an imperfect narrative. And this is probably the hardest part of it. And it is just about reminding myself to stay true to the moment, and whatever it is that I'm feeling, thinking, doing, whatever, that is okay. And that is what I should be doing. And I will just spin the story later. I'm just kidding. I won't do that. Okay, I am genuinely trying to be okay with an imperfect narrative, and more I've actually come to realize how beautiful these imperfect narratives are. And it sounds really cheesy, but especially for big milestone moments, I've always been very attached to a very perfect, tight narrative. But there's been a lot of videos I've seen, and even in my personal life, of people sharing these like big milestone moments, for example, engagements, babies, mainly those two, and how they don't go as planned. And like, I've heard so many stories of just like couples who really didn't think they were gonna end up together, and they end up together. Or suddenly hearing that some friends are expecting their first child, and I find out that that child was an accident, but like, oh well, who cares? Who cares if the narrative is like not perfect? Life is just life, right? And the thing I have to get through my brain, other than that imperfect narratives are also beautiful, is that even if I have a perfect narrative, or if I don't, no one cares. No one cares but me. Anyways, I've been talking about this for far too long. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for listening. And I always want to say something as a final clause, but I don't have anything to say. Yeah, let me know if you struggle from a similar affliction or if you're a normal human being. Okay, bye.